Okay.
Good morning, members of the media. Thank you once again for joining us on what I consider to be a quite important issue. Today, we somewhat celebrate a victory before the High Courts of Trinidad and Tobago for Mr. Samuel Friday, who was a police officer who joined the force in 1984 and retired in December 2019. He, like many others, countless other police officers, and I dare say public servants, suffer a horrible injustice in that we presume under our law that after your retirement, that is when your salaries end, the very next paycheck that you should receive is the next month. But in terms of pension, and of course certainly the gratuity that should follow to every public servant. Mr. Friday was not fortunate to be given the benefit of the protection of the law. And indeed it is only when we file an action, Mr. O'Brien and I, before the High Court claiming constitutional relief, that payments were made in October of 2021. During the period that he was no longer receiving his salary, and certainly during the period when he was not receiving a pension or gratuity, he suffered the natural consequence of that, which is a hardship in that he had a mortgage payment that was due, and that kept adding up. The bank had to write him. He was at the period of actually losing his home when we intervened, and the bank, and we are grateful to them, stayed off from taking proceedings to take his home. But apart from which, everyday life expenditure, and then of course we had the COVID issues where he could not have earned any money at all. So he literally was made almost a beggar during this period of time. And that is why we propelled ourselves to go before the High Court and say, this is wrong. And we have several other clients who suffered similar fates. This week, Justice Ricky Rahim gave a ruling in this matter that has application across the board, because he interpreted the police service regulations that require the accounting officer, who we generally know as the permanent secretary of the Ministry of National Security, and under, of course, the responsibility of the Commissioner of Police, that at least 3 months before retirement, all the papers are to be sent for collation, for calculations, and for confirmation, so that the moment he actually retires, the next month's paycheck or check should be one of pension. In this case, he didn't do that. And the court held that a breach of that regulation was tantamount to a breach of the Constitution, in that he was not afforded the protection of the law. As a result of which, the court has ordered that he receive vindicatory damages, and also, very interestingly, that for the time that he was out of his pension money and gratuity, that he should be entitled to a 2.5% interest on that money. So we are very grateful for the judiciary in Trinidad and Tobago recognizing the injustice that was meted out to Mr. Friday in this particular case. But certainly, this has far wider consequences, because I can tell you we have, as I repeat, several other clients who have suffered similar fates. What I also understand is that there are many across the public service, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands, I do not wish to speculate, who suffer the indignity of having to be treated less than in a dignified manner from pillar to post in trying to get their pensions and gratuity. In this judgment, it is my humble view that there is a call for efficiency to be the foremost consideration when we are dealing with our brothers and sisters in the public service. This is not supposed to be a penalty on government or the state. All that we are asking for is that the accounting officers appreciate the law. And I've handed out to you the judgment, which contains the Police Service Regulations 184, that speaks specifically to 3 months before, that is, all documents are to be tendered, and also we've given you in the civil service regulations a similar legal requirement that applies to each and every civil servant in Trinidad and Tobago. In this period of time, as we are seeing grave economic hardship for working people and certainly for members of the public service, and in particular retirees who have given all their lives service to this country, that they ought to be treated with the dignity that is required to be shown for all, and not be pillar to post, treated as dogs, as if it's some favor. The law requires that their pensions be paid and the gratuity formulated so that their transition from work to retirement is one of a dignified nature and not one in penury and suffering. Efficiency is what will save this nation. Inefficiency in a large part would have caused us to be where we are today. And that if we do what we are required, because our systems are almost perfect in terms of the law requirements, but if you put a perfect system with people who operated badly, you will have a bad system operating. And that's why it's important for you members of the media to let the message go out that the time has come for Trinidad and Tobago to change its course, where we take for granted a sort of laissez-faire attitude within the public service to deal with persons who actually gave their lives in public service. Understand that if you occupy office today, there will come a time when you too, if you don't fix the system now, will be the victim of the inefficiencies. And I use the word inefficiency very guardedly. So here we are, and I am so grateful that Mr. Friday had the fortitude to go forward and file an action against this injustice, and that the courts have ruled that the protection of the law is available to him and to many others in the circumstances. So I'm willing to take some questions from you now.
Mr. Ramadan, what sort of steps do you say that public servants can now come forward and they can do the same thing? They can approach the court also?
Well, let me just say, this is not an invitation to file action, because the state is in a very difficult position right now. And at the end of the day, taxpayers will have to bear that burden once courts make the orders for damages, for costs, and something. This is really a call to public servants who have responsibility to take their responsibility seriously and understand there is a consequence to that failure. So, of course, as I say, even this morning, on the way down, people were calling me to raise this issue, and they want us to take action. Of course, we would do so. But really, if we fix the system, there will be no need for legal action to be taken. Yeah, absolutely. In the judgment which you have, he has been granted $60,000. In addition to, of course, the order for interest on the pension whilst he was not receiving it, and the gratuities. Right, so there we go. Any other questions on the matter? No, Ramadan, I do not sing. I've tried, and it was never pleasantly received. Yes.
Yeah. So, regarding the law states that you're supposed to take 3 months prior, minimum of 3 months. Yet we're hearing that people are now doing it a year in advance. What's the law pertaining to what's happening today as regarding people and their fund, pension fund?
If we have to have laws and rules on our law books, those who occupy office must be held accountable, and they must follow the law. And what you're saying is completely true. I know of circumstances where people put in their papers a year or so in advance and are met equally with a non-seamless transition from pay to pension. And that tells a whole lot about the level of care and concern of the officers who have the responsibility. But the law is clear. It must be at least 3 months, and you must have almost a seamless transition under the law. And the court, by ruling, has indicated that there is sanction available to anyone who breaches this.
So as it is right now, people who are not getting the pension like a year in advance before the prior the thing, and they still don't get the thing.
They can file an
They're
action.
breaking the law. Is the law been broken?
It is effectively, yes. It is, not effectively, it is broken. Right? And that is why office holders must obey the law. The law under the regulations, both for the police service and the public service, say at least 3 months, and it must be treated as a matter, and I shall quote in relation to the actual wording which I've given to you all, and we've marked it off for you. Right, under the Civil Service Act, it says the computation and authorization of pensions and gratuities of persons whose retirement from the civil service is known to be impending. In other words, everybody knows the date in advance. You check from the date that you joined, and so it's no surprise, no secret, no ambush. To be impending shall be treated as urgent matters of high priority. This is a law under section 33(1) of the Civil Service Regulations. 2. The permanent secretaries and heads of departments shall ensure, not may, shall ensure that particular service and pay of all officers whose retirement is known to be imminent are furnished accurately to the controller, that is Financial and Accounting Administration, not less than 3 calendar months before the date on which the officers concerned are due to retire. So understand, this is the saying, in anticipation you must do these things. In order, and the reason is, in order to enable the computation and checking of pensions, retiring allowances, and gratuities to be completed by the Comptroller and the Auditor General, because there are many checks and balances we appreciate, and submitted for authorization before the date on which the officer's retirement from service is due to take effect. So all of these things, the law says it has to be done before the date that you actually go on retirement. And 3, the Comptroller shall keep separate records with respect to each officer in the civil service, showing the various offices held by each officer and pay drawn by him while in the civil service. So this is a blanket in relation to all civil servants in our country.
Can action be taken in another court? Can action be taken in another court based on this?
Well, now we have a precedent. And before,
Yes.
the law is here. The court has ruled interpreting this law that is mandatory, and these are the things that they must do. Otherwise, it is a breach of the constitutional right to property. And therefore, when they do not follow the law, you are also in breach of his right or anyone's right to the protection of the law that is written.
Can criminal charges be
No. It's amazing because in a case where such awful consequences come, it's almost criminal the way some persons are treated. In his case, in one, and there are others. I mean, there's another case that we are doing where this gentleman, a police officer, gave all of his life in the most dangerous of deployments, where his life was at risk for. And he today is living off his father's pension, who's close to 90 years old. He has a teenage daughter. You all know, as children grow, their needs, and he is humiliated. But thank God he has a father who is receiving a pension, who's close to 90 years old. So the humiliation, the indignity, and these are people of pride. And after all of his life giving beyond human service, and he's got commendations, not just locally but internationally, worked with the DA and so, and he too faces. And there are several others. So there we go. All right? Thank you all so much. I know you all are eager to go to another crime scene, right? So,
Yeah, but you see, the law is so clear that a year boy is at a